Good morning. I am Ashley Salter. I will be your unofficial host of today's panel. Some of you may have interacted with me throughout the course already. To that, hello again, and thank you all for joining us this morning. I am joined here obviously by a number of my colleagues. We are all members of the Division of Digital Learning. Try saying that 3 times fast. We also have a special guest that is joining us from the College of Medicine. So let's get started with just a couple housekeeping items. The slide that you're seeing in front of you right now is a Zoom housekeeping slide that I will gladly share with anybody that is interested. I actually might just put this in the announcements in the course. This is a recommendation that you potentially may want to use or may not wish to use. It is to allow your participants to kind of see what's coming towards them. Right now, we are in a unique situation, obviously, but our webinar today is hopefully going to just take 60 minutes. So without further ado, let's take a moment to introduce each of ourselves. So I am obviously Ashley Salter. I'm joined here. Kyle, you can say hi this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I am Kyle Riding. I am an assistant professor within the College of Medicine and Burnett Biomedical Sciences. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And Ariana Davis.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ariana Davis. I'm the Faculty Multimedia Center Manager, coming to you virtually from not really in the FMC today.
We laugh about that. One of our colleagues thought that she was still at the FMC due to her background, which is awesome. We're also joined by my colleague, John Rabel. Don, say hi.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Rabel, an instructional designer at the Center for Distributed Learning.
Thanks, John. And John Pizzo.
Hi, everyone. My name's John. I'm a web communication and person at the Division of Digital Learning on the instructional development team.
Thanks, Pizzo. And last but certainly not least, we are joined by Doug Neville. Doug, you there?
Yep, here. Doug Neville with the FMC and OIR, ready to assist whatever we need.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining. All right, so let's get started. So some of these questions were prompted by faculty needs and just basic, where do I go? Where do I start? Many of us, as I was reading your discussion posts from some of your submissions as well, have been using Zoom certainly more frequently now than ever. But this is a panel question, so I've read through the content, but I'm unsure where to start. How should I get started? And I think, Ariana, you have some great expertise over at the FMC and supporting us as we got started on this use of Zoom. Would you like to chime in and answer this first question?
Yeah, absolutely, Ashley. I'd be happy to. So first of all, to get started, I would say the biggest thing is to practice, to get in and start practicing. I think that was everybody's assignments in the first week of the class was to kind of practice with fellow faculty members. I've been practicing with people in my household. You could practice with your family. People are using Zoom all over. So if you can jump on a call with anybody, that's going to be the best way to learn anything and get started. So there's a lot of guides and things that are out there, but honestly, just jumping in and practicing and getting familiar with the buttons and where they are is going to be the simplest thing for you to do. And then, going through in Zoom outside of web courses and getting familiar with those settings is also great. As far as there's a couple differences between the browser version of Zoom and the desktop version of Zoom. So getting familiar with those differences in case for some reason your desktop client isn't working and you need to jump onto the browser. There's a few features that aren't available in the browser version. So understanding the differences between all of those would also be helpful. So hope that helps. Thanks.
That's really good feedback and some things to consider as we move on. Any other panelists want to chime in and add anything? Okay. So let's go on to our second question for our panelists. Do I need any special equipment to get started? So this has been a very common question that we have heard from various departments, various needs, various uses. John Pizzo, I think you're our technical support here in terms of what we need to get started. What do you say?
Thanks, Ashley. So, the biggest takeaway here is use what you have available to you. We all have different kinds of mics, headphones, cameras. You're not expected to go out and buy some high-end stuff, but what I am going to list is a list of like good, best, and okay practices. But really, the takeaway is use what you have, with the best equipment you have available. So, my first recommendation is use a pair of headsets, kind of like this. Earphones and a mic. It's the best way to kind of capture the audio, something small. I've got a pair of a gaming headset on. It's more comfortable to wear, but it's not expected or needed. If you don't have access to a headset with a little mic on it, such as these two, I would kind of recommend using a pair of headphones that you just plug in your computer and using your computer's, if it's a laptop, using your computer's mic. That's also a good strategy if you don't have access to a headset. If you don't have access to that, you can use your computer speakers and your computer mic. That would be like the third best option down the line. Generally, we don't always recommend that because audio feedback loops, as audio comes out of your speaker, it gets picked back up through your mic and rebroadcasted back into the system. Zoom's actually pretty good about removing that kind of audio loop, but not all applications for these kind of sessions do that. So just something to be mindful of. And then lighting. You don't really need to go out and buy any lights. The biggest thing I can say is make sure that you're lit from the front of your face rather than behind you. Right now, I don't have any front lighting because I'm kind of in a corner, but I have a window right here. So you can see as I adjust this, the shade, it changes a little bit. So that's kind of like my next best option. What you want to avoid is being lit from behind.
That makes sense. We've run into those issues with folks trying to utilize the backgrounds a lot. Is there anything specific that you can offer related to those backgrounds?
Let me go ahead and find a background real quick so I kind of demo it. So if you're looking at me, you kind of see I have this UCF background, and there's a bunch in here. Some of them are stock. The way the backgrounds are going to work is you have to have a more powerful computer. There are some system requirements to enable the background. But what you really don't want with these backgrounds is something like this. What I have here, you kind of see the waves moving behind me. There's options to do video. You really want to use those subtly because it kind of takes away from you and what you're presenting to your students. It could be a distraction. But the lighting really comes into play if you choose to use these backgrounds. For me, I'm choosing not to use one today because that's my bed right there and it's actually made. So I want to show that off because that never happens. But if you do choose to use one, I would recommend using a static image, not a video. And that's when the lighting comes into effect. If you're very backlit, you're going to blend right into that virtual background, as well as if you have to have some contrast between what you're wearing and what your general background is.
That totally makes sense. John Rabel, did you want to add something about the microphones?
Yeah, sure. So like right now, I'm using the headset that was issued to me from my soft phone. So if you have transitioned to the Skype for Business soft phone in your department, this headset works great.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Another note to make is if you have a computer such as mine, I have very limited administrative rights, so I am unable to use any sort of additional microphone for my mic. So hopefully you're able to hear me okay. I haven't run into any issues, but again, use what you have and make it work.
Ashley, could I add one more thing to that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So during when we all went live with Skype, we were kind of playing around with some software to kind of minimize background noise and remove it. And we kind of came across a tool called Crisp. And I'll post a link in the chat once I'm done talking about it. But basically, it allows you to connect your mic and it removes background noise from your mic and your speakers. So what's kind of cool about that is we kind of tested it where we had some of our friends with their kids talking in the background, or I would play music on my phone in front of my mic right here, and then we'd activate it and it would completely turn that shut off all the background noise. You couldn't hear the music, you couldn't hear the kids play in the background. Something like that, as we're all working from home, you know, family, we have friends, we have pets, people knocking on the door, you know, packages and whatnot, just other distractions. That might be a good tool to have in the toolkit if you want to go ahead and choose to use that. So I'll post a link to it in the chat right after this.
That's super helpful. I haven't tried that out, but I'm looking forward to it. We are cruising right along here. Again, just to reiterate, if you have any questions for any of the panelists, please put those in the chat area. Like I mentioned earlier, they are being closely monitored. Perhaps they are being answered within the chat by my colleagues, but also as well, they are collecting those questions that may be answered at the end of this session as well. So let's move on to question number 3. What is the most common use of Zoom in your practice? How are you using Zoom most frequently? So I know for myself, I'm using Zoom right now for training purposes, as we see here. But additionally, I am connecting with the faculty that I work with in setting up one-on-one consultations. So let's look, Kyle, you know, I know you're probably teaching right now. What can you say to answer this question?
Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, even during a pandemic, the beat goes on. So we're still having to teach on the faculty side. One of the things that I really had to remind myself early on in the process, and I would like to bring up right now, is we're all working remotely with our students at the moment, but that doesn't negate the fact that we need to differentiate between synchronous and asynchronous work. Zoom is really a platform that allows for both. In terms of the question at hand, I'm most commonly using Zoom for synchronous lectures with my students and also synchronous office hours, so I can have that one-on-one interaction with students that need me, and that class time with folks where they can ask me questions in real time and get clarification from me, and it's a little more personalized on what I'm delivering. In the platform, and I'm also using it for asynchronous purposes. One of the most common reasons I use it for a kind of asynchronous lecture would be an exam review. So with all of our exams having to be digital right now and not wanting to chew up much class time, actually going over some of the common pitfalls or mistakes they may have made, I actually sit back and use Zoom to record and voice over me going through the exam statistics feature in web courses to provide them meaningful feedback on how they performed overall. I'm using the chat box a lot with my students, along with the raise hand features and the share screen and whiteboard functionalities. So I'm trying to emulate the same features that I would use in a face-to-face synchronous session with my students in this remote synchronous environment that Zoom allows us to have.
Kyle, that's a great use of all of those different techniques and tools that are available. There was a question that just popped up in the chat that caught my eye. It was brought up in several of the discussions yesterday. Do you have any suggestions on how you're handling multiple people wanting to talk at the same time?
Sure, I do. Again, I'm assuming that doesn't mean a group of students that want to discuss a group concern. I'm thinking that means a group of students handling individual concerns. What I did up front is some solid classroom and student management principles, and I set expectations early on in the process, and I reminded them of the expectations every week in an announcement. And the expectation that I have set is that during office hours, they can email me, and I will send them a link as soon as I can. I make it clear that they need to remember, just like during regular office hours, there may be a line and that I may not get back to them as quickly, so to please be patient. But if they send me an email during that office hour window, I'm gonna do what I do on campus, which is assure that I see those students. So I basically have an open remote door policy where I will send them that link via email when they put themselves in that queue. One of the practices that I'll actually be adopting for the summer is going to be different, and it's going to manage it a little better, I hope and believe, is and just thinking about how I can use Zoom as an educator and trying to streamline the process for my students. I'm going to create standing scheduled appointments for office hours in my UCF Zoom account. And I'm going to share that link with my students to make sure they have access to it via an announcement. And essentially, I'll use the waiting room feature where I will only admit one student at a time. And when they're all set, I'll make sure they're booted out and then admit the next student that got into the line. So again, just like all of you that are probably using all these functionalities and figuring out what works best for your workflow and your students and the interactions they desire from you, I think all of us are on a learning curve right now. And I'm going to change my practice in the summer because I feel as though it creates a little more simplicity to them understanding their place in line.
That's totally true. I agree with everything that you said. The use of the waiting room for one of those sessions, it was something that we recommended also in a previous workshop that we've done. And you can have people join with that link. The link is when you set up your meeting, there is a link to invite folks to that meeting. And that is the link that you could share in your announcements or with your students, maybe on homepage or a contact me page. That would be readily available with the time and dates that you have set up. Lots of good information, Kyle. Thank you so much. Let's move on to question 4. So how will I assess my students in this setting? So that's a huge question that many faculty are facing right now. Is Zoom what I'm going to do for assessments? Should I be putting my Zoom on and recording them while they're taking their assessments? Short answer is no to that. But joining us is John Rabel to speak a little bit further in depth of some assessment options.
Thanks, Ashley. So like Ashley said, it is not recommended to use Zoom and, for instance, like Proctor Hub, another service that UCF offers. At the same time, these programs are resource intensive from a computing standpoint. So they're not really made to interact with one another, and you're actually going to cause more problems than you're actually going to try to solve by through cheating or authentication or something like that. But I see using Zoom a few different ways for assessments. So Kyle talked about kind of the synchronous setting. So if you're wanting students to go through and either do presentations or interact with each other in a synchronous settings, you can have them present just as you would in class. You can have them present to the whole class by making them a co-host. Just as we have the panel now in Zoom versus the attendees. And then also you can utilize the breakout room. So if you want them to kind of interact with themselves and then think about it if you were in a physical space and if you broke out your students into groups, you can go in to each breakout room, not at the same time, but it would be like walking around a room and kind of monitoring the interaction in a synchronous environment. You can also have them do asynchronous activities with Zoom. So that mainly revolves around recording themselves as we see now that not only giving face-to-face presentations, but creating effective and engaging online presentations is a vital skill. As we're all doing that now. So having students being familiar with the technology, each student does have a Zoom account. You could either have them do it in their own private rooms, or you can set up rooms for them in web courses at UCF. So that's just a few ways to assess the students in the setting. If you're teaching a large class, I wouldn't really recommend doing anything kind of synchronous. Use it as more of an asynchronous tool, then it's something that they could submit through the assignment tool in web courses.
Definitely agree. I just saw thanks, John. I just saw a note in the chat regarding internet connection. Typically, it is due to any lag or breakup that you're hearing is definitely due to an audio connection, could be on either side. One recommendation that has worked for me personally in these workshops is to stop the use of my video. So that would be like turning my video off, but you can still hear the audio. But then also keeping in mind that if you are going to be hosting a lecture live, that may be an option. So again, recommendation is to record any of these lectures or messages that you need to send in advance to avoid any sort of internet connection. But if you are experiencing that, most of the time it is due to the internet bandwidth that is being used on either end. Let's see here. We are going to head on to question 5, unless anybody else wanted to speak on different variations of assessment. Kyle, I don't know if there's anything that you're doing on your end related to assessments that you may want to add in. Feel free to chime in. Otherwise, I'll move along.
Not using the Zoom platform at this time. I have been using Proctor Hub and actually just sat through training recently for the Honor Lock system. So not using Zoom unless I have a student with a webcam issue. For example, I do have 2 students in a section of a course I'm teaching right now that do not have a device that works with the Proctor Hub webcam system. So what I'm asking them to do is actually, I'm creating a Zoom room for them with a link that they can get into that will record automatically for me, that I won't be in there. So they don't feel that added pressure of me watching, because that's unfair. They may feel a pressure that others aren't dealing with. There's the psychology of test taking, the psychology of being a student there. So I am using Zoom as a bypass for those with issues using other platforms that relate to fidelity of assessment.
Totally makes sense. Thank you. So our 5th question, in light of recent media coverage, what can I do to protect my Zoom space? So I've also seen in the chat just briefly, there is major concern regarding the security of using Zoom. Is it a safe space? Where are we with those security settings? Is there anything that you can do to prevent some of the recent media coverage regarding Zoom? Here to speak on that is Ariana. Ariana, how can you help protect us?
Hi, thanks, Ashley. So I would usually say, I've heard Ashley say this before, there's no magic button to prevent cheating, or there's no magic button for, security. But actually, Zoom recently, because of all this media coverage, has taken a lot of steps to change a lot of their settings and add features that make it easier for faculty and anybody using Zoom to secure their meetings. So there actually has been an added security button, a magic little security button in your Zoom meetings. So just if you don't see that button when you're hosting your Zoom meetings, make sure you update your client so that you can actually see that button. And it has a few different options, like not allowing people to share their screens, kind of muting participants, turning off video. There's all these different ways that you can do that. When you're scheduling a meeting, make sure, you have that box checked that requires authentication for access. Basically, that means that students have to sign in with their NID and NID password to access the meeting. So then you're not getting any outside people who don't have a UCF account accessing it. You can enable a password for a meeting. You can disable join before host. On some cases, you might want students to be able to join before you get there, but if you're worried about security, you can disable that so that students can't get into the meeting, or anybody can't get into the meeting before you do. You can use the waiting room, which means that you'd have to admit everybody who comes into the space. And vice versa, you can also send people back to that waiting room. You can remove students if they're being disruptive from a meeting. You can mute them. There's a lot of different features on that. And I believe there's an entire page, I don't know if you've gotten to it yet in the course, I think there's an entire page in the course on keeping your meetings secure. And there's also a guide for that on the CDO website as well. So there's a lot of different things you could do to kind of combat those kind of security issues. But the biggest one, most of all, is do not share a link to a Zoom meeting with anybody that you don't want in the meeting. So don't post it on Twitter, don't post it on Facebook. That's where a lot of, I think the security issues originally stemmed from, was people were sharing links publicly, and those were then getting passed around the internet and people were joining them. So if you just want your students to join, make sure you're only sending it to them through web courses, and you're not passing that link around elsewhere. So I think that answered it. Does anybody else have anything else? Sorry, I'll let Ashley take back over.
Thank you for that. I think probably Zoom picked up on how many times I must have said that in the last couple of weeks. There is no magic button, and they created one. So with that being said, I think we can move on to 6. What sort of tips for recording your lectures ahead of time do you have? Doug, I know that you have worked with Panopto for years now and are the master of Panopto. Do you have any suggestions on recording lectures, perhaps in advance, that you could offer?
I'd like to, we've done a pretty good job of covering a lot of this, but I did make some notes that I didn't want to forget. So I'm just going to jump around a little bit. And these are all very basic. By the way, I'm doing this on a regular laptop with laptop audio, no headphones, everything laptop. So you don't have to get intimidated if you don't have the fanciest gear or anything like that. The most important thing is to test and practice and get yourself comfortable. Prior to actually recording your lecture, you can open the Zoom app, start a meeting with yourself, and record to your desktop, and then review it and see how you did. Oh, and you do want a webcam. Disembodied voices are not good. And Zoom gives you lots of cool tools that everybody's talking about here, but again, don't get intimidated. Keep it simple and work your way as when you get comfortable. That's simple as that. Do use a wired connection. We should all know that. Don't turn off the security. Get comfortable with it. Be aware that Zoom cloud recordings could take some time to process, so don't wait till the last minute. Basic AV, John did a good job of covering this. Backlighting and low lighting. Do be aware if you have your monitor all the way up in brightness, it can reflect off your glasses. And if you are having problems with lighting, put something right behind the laptop, like a light. It'll do wonders. Audio, quiet spot. Try not to have anybody ring the doorbell so the dog doesn't go nuts. If you're using virtual backgrounds, or if you can't use virtual backgrounds, as John had mentioned, use a still photo. It's not as distracting. Importantly, if you are sharing your desktop, make sure it's clear, no confidential information on it. You don't want to accidentally show somebody you shouldn't. Some notes that you may or may not need. Zoom does not allow you to combine videos in the cloud recording. To combine, you have to download and use an editor and then host. So be aware of that before you plan your lectures. No editing features in Zoom besides basic start and trim. And the catch here is if you download the video, you see the whole thing. The edits, the trims are not there. So you should just be aware of that. Shorter videos, of course, but if you are doing a normal length class recording, the students can pause. And the most important thing is don't try to be perfect. Just be yourself. You are what makes the video. So just be yourself. And finally, always try to say goodbye. It's not only polite, but it lets everyone know it's over. And so to close this, I'm going to say, it's not over. Goodbye, and thank you.
That was awesome, Doug. Thanks so much. Is there anyone else on our panel that would like to add to any sort of tips that weren't covered by Doug? Doug, you did a phenomenal job there. I feel like I want to go record something just to record. Anybody?
Yeah, I just want to add to that. Doug brought up a great point about, if you don't have access to video, use a still shot. Just want to let you know, you can actually add your still shot in Zoom, ucf.zoom.us, and then go ahead and log in, click profile, and add your still shot. And a note on that is to add the largest possible image you can, so that it appears, when it's blown up on the screen, it would appear nice and crisp. I think the 2 megabyte is the file size limit there. Another thing I know, and this is kind of something I learned when I started doing Zoom sessions, is that I have 3 monitors. I have one here, I have another one over here, and then I have another one over here. So it's very common for me to look over here as I work with stuff, but it doesn't look that good, my side profile of my face, when I'm actually talking and presenting. So I try to make a habit, and you have to make a habit of this. Look at your webcam when you're talking to people. As other people are talking, you may have noticed that I may disable my webcam, such as this. And that's when the photo comes in, because as other people are talking, I'm looking at my window in front of me right here and monitoring chat. So your setup may be a little different. You know, you may be a single presenter in your course presented to students, but these are things to kind of keep in mind as you're working with things. In addition to sharing your screens, I would also throw out there, make sure you pull that up in advance. It's very nice to have web courses pulled up, your assignments, grading rubrics, PDFs, Word documents, videos, YouTube videos, pull all that up in a browser tab, because what you want to avoid is something like this, where you're presenting and you're like, okay, 1 second, I'm gonna go click my web browser, type in the address. You know, we just wasted like 5-10 seconds, page load times, 20 seconds just to pull up a YouTube video versus just clicking on a browser with it already pulled up. So as you're getting ready to start your lecture, kind of think about the things you want to pull up on your screen ready to go at the time you need to share them.
Great additions, absolutely.
Ashley, I have something.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I've noticed is, this is something from a viewing perspective, is ceiling fans. Notice mine is off right now, but if it's on, it's constantly going, and at the frame rate that it captures, it looks stuttered in the video and it's very distracting. So either try and frame your video where it's not on, or if you can't, then just make sure and turn your ceiling fan off.
That's right. And always be cautious of your backgrounds.
Ashley, if you mind me adding into about recording lectures ahead of time, this probably goes without saying for many of you. However, it becomes very easy with pre-recorded lectures to sometimes lose our personality and get more into kind of going through the presentation very dry mode. We're used to having that student interaction, that synchronous real-time interaction. And so without that, we can tend to relapse into more of just a reading type of mode. Keep your personalities. One of my favorite mottos in life and in teaching is, it's nice to be natural when you're naturally nice. So let all of your great personalities and your expertise really come out, because your students notice those things, they feel those things, and that's what engages them with you. So even if it is an asynchronous recording in this remote environment, keep up that personality that has made you all experts, that has led you to this faculty position, because your students truly do value that additional component that you bring to the table.
Well said, Kyle. Super positive reminder for all of us. Before we go on to the next question, I just briefly glanced over again. There was a question from Todd regarding recording a 4-hour session. My recommendation is that you do not record your 4-hour session in one sitting. Not only would that be a challenge for you to do, and then the recording purposes of the file size, but I could definitely see that as a concern for student attentiveness. I would definitely recommend breaking them up by perhaps, an hour increment, or perhaps even based on the subject or topic that you're covering. 4 hours is a very long time for someone to sit and watch that in the full duration, and think about appropriate use of the video thereafter. Another thing that I just noticed was a question regarding sharing audio and video in one of your share screens. From my end, I am able to share my screen with you. I can share that, but unfortunately, when I select to share the audio, I am prompted with those administrative lockdown requests. So I, from my CDL computer, cannot share my audio with you, which our workaround for this has been to allow John Pizzo to stream in that wonderful elevator music that is shared in the beginning of most of our training sessions. So we have found a workaround. Another workaround that I have used as well is to share and that audio from my my cell phone, my iPhone device. It is not perfect. I am working with what I have. You may have also seen a slash between a meme and a picture where people have set up multiple soup cans and stuck their mobile device in there and made a makeshift document camera for times like this. We're working with what we have, but I can tell you from my end, I am unable to share my computer audio. It does request me for administrative rights, and I have not been successful in getting that situated at this time. Not to say you won't have better luck than I have, but perhaps if it's a YouTube video or something that you're sharing, you may want to share that file or that link to the video that you're sharing, like if it's a YouTube video, or embed that video within your course. Not only does that make it a little bit more accessible, but it also allows them to go back and view it at their own time should your students experience any audio or video issues on their end as well. So let's see.
Hey, Ashley.
Yeah.
Can I jump in real quick? And I'm seeing a common request about the whiteboards in Zoom. Could I address that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. We're opening up to panel questions. So we'll start with whiteboards. And then Jackie, if you want to start kind of jotting down some questions that we can go ahead and answer once Pizzo has answered this one. We'll be ready to go.
Thank you, Ashley. So I kind of been like following the chat, and I see whiteboards popping up a few times, and strategies for integrating the whiteboard into your lessons. So whiteboards, very similar to like you could expect to see like a traditional doc cam in a classroom. With the whiteboards, especially if you're like I'll use our math faculty in the session. What I would recommend for whiteboard is if you have like a Microsoft Surface, something with a touch screen and a pen or a stylus. Wacom tablets also work pretty good. Those are like 20, 30, 40, 60 bucks, high end, 100. If you have a tablet of some kind, an Android tablet with a stylus, those would be great to use as whiteboards, because what it allows you to do is to use the pen to draw on the tablet, and then that will get put into the whiteboard session in Zoom. It's much easier to do that than to draw out letters and numbers and Greek equations for math with your mouse. It's going to look way more accurate, and you're going to be able to do it 100 times faster. So what you can do, what we've been recommending to attendees, is that you go log into the Zoom session on your computer, hook up your headset and mic. On your tablet, if you do have a tablet with touchscreen and a stylus, go access the Zoom session on that device. And promote that user, which that you would be yourself, as a host or co-host in your session, and then share that screen from that device as the whiteboard, and then you could actually use your stylus to draw on that for complex equations and annotating.
Awesome. Anyone else? John Rabel, I saw, did you have any suggestions on the whiteboard feature?
So I was just saying, if you needed to also, instead of handwriting equations, if you wanted to use the equation editor in web courses to kind of create them as well, the equation editor is available in any area of the rich content editor. So on a page, you can type some equations out, or you can build out the equations before and then do a screen recording of that page and kind of walk through that. Or you can take a screenshot of the equations, and then you can mark them up in the whiteboard using the pen or a pencil.
Actually, if you mind me seconding, or don't mind me seconding that, the opinions there, I use an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil, and I had a student email me yesterday with concerns about a mathematical formula that they needed to do. So again, I used the record screen feature and notes on my iPad and just drew out all of the math that was going on to review where they were going wrong with them, and was able to email that back in a very, very fast, within 10 minutes. I had this done, recorded, they had their answer. So it's not necessarily a Zoom fix. It's not necessarily getting to the question of how do I use the whiteboard in these synchronous sessions more effectively, but I really need to second using all of the tools that you may have or could have at your disposal to really create a variety of platforms that engage your students in this remote environment.
Awesome. Wonderful. Just a quick question regarding if you are pre-recording lectures or information, can you save those and use them in future sections of your course? Absolutely. So if you're going to invest this semester in pre-recording your lectures, getting your PowerPoints, you can absolutely use those in the future. We don't know the future of our contract with Zoom. However, you can always save those files and you can use them in a variety of different ways later on as well. So absolutely, that's another benefit also to pre-recording those. Let's see, let's check in with Jackie right now. Jackie, are there any hot topics that we need to cover?
Hi guys. Sure, I've been collecting some of the bigger questions I've noticed throughout this panel session. First, someone asked how big are Zoom recordings? In the case of cloud recordings, they want to know how large these files are and what's the best way for getting these into web courses, since web courses does have a limited file space.
That's a good question.
I can answer that if you want, Ashley. There's actually, so when you record in the cloud, Zoom, when you go check out your recordings in zoom.ucf.us and you check the recordings tab, you actually can see the file size of the recording. It tells you right next to it, the file size. And I think I've done a few different recordings that have been about an hour, and they're usually like 100 to 200 megabytes large. They're not huge files. So they do a good job of compressing the files for the cloud recordings. So vice versa with the local recordings, there is some compression on those too, but you get an MP4 on your computer after that. Also, when you share the files to your web courses and they're just hosted on Zoom, so say you don't download the files and then share them in web courses by like uploading them to web courses, then you would be avoiding hitting your limit in your web courses file size. You would just be pretty much sending them back to Zoom servers, so you don't have to worry about file size limits in web courses if you're using Zoom recordings hosted there. I hope that kind of makes sense to everybody. So
Awesome.
All right, so another question we had was about FERPA and Zoom. So if a student is showing their face or showing their name during a Zoom recorded lecture, what protection can we guarantee for those students?
I don't mind answering that one either if nobody else wants to chime in. So as far as protecting the recording and protecting the meeting itself, so if you're not recording it and you're just having a meeting and your students are joining, they're signing in, that's protecting everybody there if they're having to sign in to access your meeting. Like also you can add, when you share a recording, you can add passwords, and you can also require sign in at that point also to view the recording. I believe that that's even been set as a default setting now, that anytime you create a new recording, there's a password assigned to it that's a unique password, and the students have to sign in to view it, and they have to be UCF students. So you can change those settings if for some reason, say you were recording just yourself and there were no students in the room and you don't really mind if that recording gets shared, you can change those settings so that they can be shared more openly with other colleagues or people outside of the university. But I'm pretty sure, as far as I've seen on default right now, any recordings moving forward are going to be locked down in that sense. There's also go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, can you define, or maybe if you know, I don't know if it's out there, is there a limitation on the files that are in Zoom? So we have unlimited storage space for unlimited lectures or in recordings?
As,
Yeah.
so that's honestly a good question. I think I have to find out, because as far as I've been told, we don't have like a limit per se, and I think if we did, it's pretty high, and not a lot of people have met it. Actually, I might turn to John, because John has been recording all of our workshops, which have been hours and hours and hours of content. And if he has not hit a limit yet, I'd be curious to know. I have not hit a limit yet. The compression is pretty great in Zoom, in that the file sizes for recordings are not very large. But yeah, I haven't gotten a definite answer one way or the other with that.
Yeah, I haven't hit a limit in my Zoom account, and if I have, nobody's told me anything. And yeah, our recommendation would be to maintain that, or be conscious of that limit in web courses, just record to the cloud and post there. And even the videos I downloaded, and I'm going off memory here from like 2 weeks ago, I think like a 1 hour session was around like 120, 200 megabytes. It wasn't really that big of a file. It was very well compressed.
Awesome. Thank you for that. There is a participant that just noticed that our settings in this session are a little bit different than what she's seeing on her side. Just wanted to speak to that for a moment. And John Pizzo, you may want to chime in as well. This setting has been set up with some very unique twists and tweaks on the back end that are not necessarily available to all users. This is to allow for an excessive number of participants to join us at one time. So if you are there, John Pizzo, if you want to speak to this just briefly, it has been noticed.
Yeah, so what we're using is we're using a webinar license in Zoom, and for the most part, 95% of the settings are going to be identical. It's just a little bit different, with the exception of 1 or 2 settings in the way that it's managed, and a few options. And we did this just to compensate for expecting of a larger audience given the sessions. But for most cases, we would always recommend using Zoom meeting. If there is a case for a larger session, consult with us, consult with Ariana, myself, your instructional designer, and we'll find an alternative for you.
Absolutely, as well. So as we're nearing the last final 10 minutes, we'll take one more question from the chat. Jackie?
Sure. So this is a question we had. If we pre-record lectures in Zoom and upload them to web courses, how can we verify that students are watching it?
John Rabel? Anybody?
As far as I know, there is no way to verify that somebody watched a previous lecture. There is a way that you can verify if somebody came to your meeting. So I understand that you're talking about pre-recorded, but if somebody came to your meeting, you do get a report on who came and when they joined and how long they were in the meeting in the live session. But as far as I know, and anybody can feel free to correct me on this.
I was just thinking about this. It would be similar to if you put a video in your course. If you're doing that, the recommendation is always to have some sort of purpose with those videos that you're having them watch. Perhaps if you pre-recorded a lecture, you would have a assignment or some sort of element that you're pointing out to them. Oftentimes when I see faculty using sharing of YouTube links or video links, I always recommend that they identify why they're having them watch them. For example, students pay close attention to 1 minute, 25 seconds to 3 minutes. That is, and then go over what that is. You're using these as supplemental resources to supplement the instruction that you're giving, and that would be appropriate. Additionally, you could also have an assignment that is tied to your lecture. Hey, it's really important that you watch this lecture. This upcoming quiz or assessment is going to call on the information and content shared here. So now that we're nearing the closing area, I'd like to call on our panelists to give some insight to the unique circumstances that we are in as faculty, but more so identifying a little bit of grace that we need to have and keep with not only ourselves as instructors making what we have work, but also with our students. Kyle, you are currently teaching. I think that this would be a great point for you to kind of chime in and share the realistic approach here. And then after John Pizzo, I know I've heard you say some really important information regarding this.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. This is, I love the word grace. I think having grace right now for our students and for one another, and having empathy far greater than what we normally give out is an important human characteristic we all need to adopt right now. This is unusual circumstances. You are probably stressed out as faculty, as I have been, as everyone has been, with questions you're asking about your instruction and how to keep it going. And I have to applaud the team in digital learning for everything they're sending our way to help with that. But our first role as instructors really should be expectation setting and framing rules for the class. You know, I see a great question in the chat. Are students receiving training on using Zoom so they are ready? And there's a response in terms of the website information. And that's great that there are web tools available. But it's also upon us as faculty to create ground rules in our classroom. Do you prefer they interact with you during a synchronous session via chat? You should make that known. Do you want them to use the hand raise feature and speak to you during it? You should make that known. How do you accommodate students that don't have access to maybe one of those systems that you would prefer? So do you use both? You need to create the groundwork for your classroom environment yourself, first and foremost. And you need to have empathy and you need to have grace to the fact that even in 2020, the idea of safe learning spaces for our students when they're away from campus, the idea of access to stable internet, and maybe it's my ISP or maybe it's other people's ISP. We've talked about connection issues already on this talk. None of those things are guaranteed. So really creating a level playing field, creating a framework of rules, but opening the door to your students, reaching out to you when the rules don't fit their reality and working with them. I think we all need to have that grace for one another as we tackle, it's a crazy time. There's no doubt wherever you stand on your opinions on our current situation in this world, it's a crazy time. And for me, it really is about setting ground rules and also assuring that students feel that they can reach out to you when they can't achieve the rules you're setting up. That's their biggest concern right now.
Excellent. John Pizzo, just a quick 30 seconds to a minute, last final ideas and suggestions to make sure that we're keeping the idea.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, Kyle. And that was very well put together. It's kind of been aligned with what I've been telling people. A part of my job is to actually monitor social media for the division. I'm seeing a lot of chatter from students, how they're feeling through this, some of the challenges they're having. And you know, in addition to empathy, there's a balance between that empathy and student success. Right now, a lot of students are looking to take courses, and they traditionally a handful of them only take face-to-face classes because they don't have access to the technology. Whether it's they go to a computer lab, testing center, library equipment rental, resources on campus, that's no longer an option for them. And we don't want to limit them by what classes they can take in this new remote learning format in the summer. So right now, internet's going down in certain regions from high access usage. Everyone's working from home. Kids, K-12 is at home. Businesses are home. We're home. Internet during peak hours is an issue. Have a backup plan. If your internet goes out, do a recording, post a recording. Try to be hardlined as much as you can. Access to a webcam, that's a big topic right now that a lot of our students are feeling frustration on. I myself was looking for a webcam and I couldn't find one under $100 that could be shipped to me within a week or two. So one of the recommendations to combat that is, find alternatives for those students who don't have access to it. And we don't have the answer. We may not have the answers, but if you get with one of us, tell us your unique situation, we'll do our best to help you and come up with a strategy to help you and your students. So that's kind of been a big issue there. I'm trying to think. Internet, we have webcam. Syllabus, yes. Post your syllabus there. Sorry, let me back up here. If you use your syllabus tool in web courses to build your syllabus, and then when you go into Faculty Web Course Manager, and we'll get directions in the chat how to do this, you can actually show that your syllabus to students before they enroll into the class. And what this is good, it's going to allow students to actually see what your course policies are during this time, requirements for your class. Do they need a webcam? Are there exceptions if a webcam can't be readily available or access to? Students want to see that before they post in your course. So we want to make sure that really want to find that balance between empathy and student success.
Awesome job. Thank you so much, Peter. I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to make sure that I'm able to cover all of these links. And it just piggybacks what he was just saying regarding support. Some of the items that you're seeing on your screen right now from the PowerPoint are links that you can absolutely think about including into your syllabus. So the very first link that you're seeing is UCF Keep Teaching. That Keep Teaching link is updated every single day. Anytime that there's new information to disperse to faculty and staff, that is the place to perhaps bookmark and keep following. Right underneath that, you'll see UCF Keep Learning, and that is the student side. So just as John was just stating, consider appropriate language within your syllabus, that would be something that I would definitely recommend putting into your syllabus, maybe perhaps even an announcement. That is really important. The third item on the list is the Zoom guides. Now, many of us sitting here as panelists today have this bookmarked. We use it often. Some of our very own Zoom experts, as we have coined them, utilize the Zoom guides every single day. Same with web courses, with the Canvas guides. If you are new to using web courses at UCF, the Canvas guides, you just Google Canvas guides. That is a really great opportunity to, if you don't know how to do something, if you're unsure how to create an assignment, how to create a quiz or assessment, how to create a page. I don't know what I'm doing here. Help me out. The Canvas guides are just a remarkable resource. Additionally, the Zoom guides are the same, but for Zoom. If the guides are not helping you and you need actual humans to assist you, don't worry, you're here. Is really important for everyone to understand is web courses at UCF is always available. If you call and you leave a message with their phone system, please make sure you leave your name, what's happening, and then a way for them to get in touch with you. Perhaps you are IDL certified and you have kind of lost touch with your instructional designer. Now is a good time to reach out to them in discussion of how to maybe adapt your course to better fit the needs of our times that we're in right now. And lastly, and certainly not least, is a faculty multimedia center. So listen, okay, if you have a need that you are working in Zoom and you feel really overwhelmed right now, I want you to know that there is support and help for you. The FMC has a group of colleagues that can set up a one-on-one appointment with you and guide you through everything from how to schedule a Zoom meeting, how to record to the cloud, and really hold your hand in this process. They are a remarkable team, and they're here to assist us in learning this new tool, navigating it well, but by far the best tool that you can do is get in there and get practicing, create Zoom sessions, reach out to a friend, a colleague. It's a great time to reach out to maybe even some friends and family, host I think I saw it yesterday, a virtual happy hour, a coffee hour, a check-in. Just get in there and get comfortable. The more you use Zoom, the more you're going to become familiar, and that confidence is going to build. So with that, We are right at 11 o'clock. We met our goal. It's 60 minutes. And the recording of this session, once again, will be shared within the course. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to myself, Beth Nettles, and any of the resources that you see on your screen. And then we hope that you will continue on. I wish every one of you success, and we'll see you back in the course. Take care, guys.